A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 35. Roxanne was moved upon hearing Harvey's words. I understand. Thank you, Professor. Unable to stand seeing her being slandered by netizens online, Harvey softened his tone after giving her a quick lecture. Give it your all now that everyone knows you're my student. Don't let me down. Roxanne grinned. I'll do my best. I believe in you, encouraged Harvey. Also, that Damaris kid. He's not bad, you know, Professor. Roxanne hurriedly cut him off knowing what he was about to say. I have to make breakfast for Archie and Benny. I'll talk to you next time. Harvey stopped at the mention of the two boys. All right. Say hi to them for me. Okay, the woman responded before pausing briefly. Please thank everyone on my behalf. Harvey readily agreed. Then, they both hung up. A knock came on the door right after the call ended. Roxanne glanced at the time before quickly getting out of bed. She opened the door to find Archie and Benny standing outside. Are you not feeling well, Mommy? They asked, staring straight at her. The children would normally be eating breakfast by then, but they had waited much longer than usual that morning only to realize there was no food, nor had their mother left her room. Hence, they made their way over, worried that Roxanne may have fallen sick. Sorry for keeping you waiting. I was just in the middle of a call with Professor Lambert, the woman apologized while caressing her son's heads. Why don't you go heat up some milk? Relieved that she was in good health, the boys headed back downstairs to prepare breakfast. Roxanne then went back into the room to wash up. By the time she was done, her sons had already prepared breakfast, including her share. Upon taking a seat at the dining table, Roxanne suddenly recalled something. Now that the comments are looking better, I won't have to trouble Lucian by getting him to come and pick the boys up. Yet, the doorbell rang just as she was about to dial Lucian's number. As Roxanne stopped tapping on her phone and was just on her way to get the door, the two boys ran ahead in excitement and opened the mansion gates without even looking at the security camera footage. They knew who was waiting outside. Good morning, Mr. Farwell. Archie and Benny greeted in their squeaky voices. Lucian nodded at them. Estella wished the boys a good morning before dashing straight into the house and throwing herself into Roxanne's arms. Ms. Jarvis, she called out exuberantly while clinging to the woman. Roxanne stilled momentarily before beaming and stroking the girl's head. You sure are early today, Essie. The child gazed up at her, looking as though there were stars in her eyes. That's because I couldn't wait to see you, Ms. Jarvis. Roxanne felt her heart melt as she heard that, and for a second, she didn't know how to respond to the little girl's adoration toward her. At that moment, Lucian walked in and raised an eyebrow upon seeing the boys' breakfast on the dining table. Not waiting for him to say anything, Archie and Benny took out 2 glasses of warm milk and placed them on the table before turning to him eagerly. We warmed these up ourselves. Lucian's frown deepened when he heard the boys, and he eventually decided to hold his tongue. As the children looked on eagerly, Lucian sat down at the table and took a sip of the drink made by Archie and Benny. Estella, too, happily joined her father and drank a mouthful until she ended up with a milk mustache. Archie, Benny, "You guys are amazing," she exclaimed. "Wow! I've never even made breakfast for myself before." Amused by the look of admiration on Estella's face, Roxanne chuckled and promptly handed her a piece of tissue. Archie and Benny, on the contrary, were feeling mighty proud of themselves after the little girl's compliment. "You could have told me if you didn't have time to prepare breakfast. I can always take the kids out to eat," Lucian said in a low voice. Right there and then, Roxanne suddenly remembered why she had wanted to call earlier and turned her attention to Lucian. "I've already settled everything on my end, Mr. Farwell. I won't have to trouble you again." As for what she was referring to, the two of them knew perfectly well while the three kids stayed in the dark. All the kids knew was that they'd no longer be able to attend school together, which left them sorely disappointed. Puzzled, Lucian furrowed his brows and glanced at Roxanne. "What? I can't believe Roxanne has managed to settle the matter. I left so hastily this morning that I haven't even read the online discussion. Did the Farwell Group's warning to the Hightower family last night work? Was that why everything worked out?" "Professor Lambert helped me quite a bit," Roxanne said with a smile. "That's why it all went rather smoothly." Upon hearing that Harvey had lent a helping hand, Lucian began to feel his inner doubts melt away. After all, Harvey was a more persuasive and compelling figure in the medical field than the Farwell Group could ever be. Alas, it wasn't convenient for Roxanne and Lucian to discuss the matter in front of the children, so the latter merely nodded his acknowledgement. "Got it." After breakfast, Roxanne decided to head out with her family since she figured there wouldn't be any problems at the research institute. With that, the three children piled into her car and followed behind Lucian's car to the kindergarten. Before long, Roxanne had dropped the kids off with Pippa and watched them walk into school. However, instead of leaving, she turned around to look at Lucian. "Thank you for your help in this matter, Mr. Farwell." Surprised, the man cocked a brow in response. "That's odd. I did indeed help a lot, but I also made sure to keep everything on the down low." "How did she find out about it?" "Well, I called Mr. Queen up," Roxanne hurriedly explained. "Moreover, if it weren't for the pressure from Farwell Group, I doubt Jessica would have apologized to me publicly." In all honesty, Roxanne was shocked when Jessica's public apology went online the night before. Thanks to that, however, Harvey's interview in the morning yielded immediate results. She had always suspected Jessica to have masterminded the controversy, but alas, she couldn't find the evidence to back her speculation up. Furthermore, Jessica wasn't the kind to apologize on her own accord, which could only mean that someone else was pulling the strings. Jack had run off early in the morning to investigate, but since Roxanne had yet to hear back from him, it'd be safe to assume that the matter had nothing to do with the Damaris family. After much pondering, her only conclusion was that Lucian must have stepped in to help. "Come to think of it, isn't it strange that he's been helping me out so much in secret?" Realizing that Roxanne had already figured out the truth, Lucian knew he didn't have to hide it anymore. "Please be more careful if you encounter such a situation again." To that, Roxanne nodded sheepishly in agreement. "Do not let her off." Meanwhile, in the hotel, Aubrey had also caught up with everything that had happened over the past 2 days. Even though she didn't know who the mastermind was, she was elated when she saw Roxanne getting questioned by the online community. Ha! I'm sure that won't be able to recover from such a powerful online onslaught. That way, she will eventually be forced to leave the country even if I don't take any action. When that time comes, I'll have Lucian all to myself. As a result, Aubrey continued to pay close attention to the discussions online, thinking that netizens would continue to attack and scold Roxanne. To her horror, everything took a sudden turn later that night. The first wave of anger hit Aubrey when Queen Group published its statement, causing her to toss and turn the entire night as she wondered how she could blow the matter up. Unfortunately, the situation only worsened when Jessica issued a public apology and confessed to spreading the nasty rumors out of sheer jealousy. Since they were both in Harrington's upper-class social circle, Aubrey knew Jessica's reputation well enough to surmise that the latter couldn't have apologized on her own. Something must have happened that forced her to take such a drastic measure. Therefore, as frustrating as things were, Aubrey didn't dare to act rashly. After staying up all night seething with rage, she was distracted when her phone suddenly rang in the morning. Upon seeing that it was an unknown caller, Aubrey hung up the phone without hesitation. From the day before till that morning, she felt like she had been on an emotional roller coaster that sent her plummeting to rock bottom. When Harvey's interview came on, the atmosphere around her became even more frighteningly frigid, so why would she be in any mood to answer a stranger's call? To Aubrey's surprise, she had only just ended the call when she received a text from the same number. "Ms. Pearson, don't you want to hear about Mr. Farwell?" The mention of Lucian instantly grabbed Aubrey's attention as she furrowed her brow and carefully weighed her options. In the end, she decided to call the number, and the person on the other end answered within seconds. "Who are you?" Aubrey asked coldly. Eyes blazing with fury, Jessica replied, "It doesn't matter if you don't know me, Ms. Pearson. All you need to know is the relationship between Mr. Farwell and Roxanne Jarvis." Upon hearing that, Aubrey felt her heart sink. What? I can't believe she knows about Lucian and Roxanne. If word gets out, what would people think about me as the fiancé? Aubrey replied cautiously, "What are you talking about? I don't understand what you're implying." "Ha! You'd better keep an eye on Roxanne Jarvis, Ms. Pearson. Because of her, Mr. Farwell pushed Hightower Group to its edge in just one day," Jessica snapped. "Now that you know what he's willing to do for Roxanne, what do you think their relationship's like?" Needless to say, Aubrey's heart sank even further. The Farwell Group took action, hey? I've always known there was something between Lucian and that, but I never expected him to go to such lengths for her. Wait a minute. Are you Jessica Hightower? Aubrey asked. A cold chuckle rang out on the other end before Jessica's voice sounded again. "I'm surprised that you'd even know me, Ms. Pearson. Don't worry. I won't divulge anything about the relationship between Lucian and that. That said, I do hope you won't let her off." With that, Aubrey finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank you for informing me. Since that has the guts to seduce Lucian, I'll make her pay for it. Ask someone to send you." After hanging up the call, all Aubrey could think of was everything Lucian had done for Roxanne. At the same time, she felt grateful for staying out of that matter. If I'd done anything, Lucian would definitely find out. If that happens, I'm afraid I'll face a fate as terrible as Jessica's. Still, Lucian is blatantly favoring that, Roxanne, now. If this situation drags on, I'll risk losing my position as Lucian's fiancé. I need to make a move. Aubrey sat inside the room for the entire morning but failed to come up with any plan. In the afternoon, when the waitress came to deliver her meal, she got up to open the door. Aubrey frowned slightly at the sight of the waitress pushing the cart full of food into the room as an idea popped into her head. The waitress was shifting the plates of food from the cart to the dining table when a hand suddenly appeared from behind her. That's not needed. I'll do it myself, Aubrey uttered gently. The waitress was stunned after hearing that. He regained her senses after a few seconds and instinctively rejected, "This is my obligation." You. Before she could finish the rest of her sentence, the waitress felt someone slam into her. Ah! Aubrey yelped and staggered 2 steps backward. Then, she fell to the floor on her side as an agonized expression spread across her face. Even before the waitress could make sense of the unexpected turns of events, she already realized anyone who could stay in the presidential suite was either very affluent or highly influential, so there was no doubt she could not afford to offend this woman. Regardless of whether she had anything to do with the customer's fall, there was no way for her to deny responsibility since that incident happened when she delivered the meal. "I'm terribly sorry. It was my fault for being careless." "Are you all right?" the waitress hastily apologized without hesitation. Aubrey held her arm and wore a tight frown. "My arm is hurting so badly." The waitress panicked at once after hearing that. "I'll send you to the hospital right away." She reached out to help Aubrey up from the floor as she spoke. Naturally, Aubrey's goal was not to visit the hospital. When she heard the waitress offer, she immediately shook her head. "That's not needed. I'm going to make a phone call." Perturbation overwhelmed the waitress' mind after Aubrey said she wanted to make a phone call. Since Aubrey did not order her to leave, the waitress had no other choice but to remain rooted in her spot and wait. Subsequently, Aubrey dialed Lucian's phone number, but it took quite a while for the call to be picked up. "What's the matter?" Lucian asked coldly. He had just finished his work in the morning and was about to have lunch when he suddenly received Aubrey's call. An icy glint flashed across her eyes when she sensed his indifferent tone. Despite that, her tone was pitiful as she said, "Lucian, my arm is hurting." He furrowed his brows after listening to her. "Go to a hospital then." However, Lucian was swiftly reminded of his mother's instruction to take care of Aubrey, prompting him to add, "I'll ask someone to send you to the hospital if necessary." Aubrey's expression grew increasingly ugly. "That's not needed. The injury is not that severe, but it's a little painful. It'll be inconvenient for me to live alone in the hotel, so can I go to your place and stay there for a couple of days?" The waitress was baffled when she saw the changes in Aubrey's expression and heard her tone. However, the next second, Aubrey glared at the waitress, causing the latter to be scared out of her wits. On the other end of the phone call, Lucian knitted his brows without showing any inclination to agree to Aubrey's request. "All along, Roxanne has been wary of my status as Aubrey's fiancé, contributing to her reluctance to accept my pursuit. Her perception of me is finally improving now. If I allow Aubrey to move into my house, I'm afraid all my previous efforts will go down the drain." His and her 741. Take care of you. Aubrey was furious because Lucian did not reply even after some time. Still, she said tenderly, I slipped and fell just now, and I think I aggravated my wound from the car accident previously. It hurts so bad. However, even after hearing that, Lucian merely replied emotionlessly, if the pain is so severe, I'll ask someone to send you to the hospital. I'll hang up now if there's nothing else. I have another meeting to attend in the afternoon. Aubrey gritted her teeth. All right. Get back to your work then. Lucian wasted no time disconnecting the call right after she spoke. Her face turned grim as she stared at the darkening phone screen. Standing at one side, the waitress piped up fearfully, Miss, let me accompany you to the hospital. Before the waitress could finish her sentence, Aubrey interrupted, Get lost. The waitress shuddered. She looked up and saw Aubrey, who had been complaining about how much her arm hurt a few moments ago, using her injured arm to knock all the dishes on the table to the floor. The floor was a complete mess after a few seconds. The waitress lamented inwardly, knowing she had been dragged into a tight spot yet not daring to utter a single word. She could only clean up the clutter on the floor as quickly as possible and leave the room before Aubrey threw another fit of anger. Aubrey, eyes reddened, panted heavily inside the room. Why is this happening? I've waited for Lucian for so many years, staying obediently by his side without making any complaint, yet he's giving me the cold shoulder. On the other hand, he's treating that so well, even after her unannounced departure 6 years ago. What's so good about that anyway? The more Aubrey pondered over the matter, the more furious she became. After venting her wrath briefly, she gritted her teeth and dialed Sonia's number. It did not take long before Sonia answered the call. What's the matter, Aubrey? Aubrey sobbed out, Mrs. Farwell, I'm in pain. Sonia's heart lurched with dread after hearing that. What happened to you? Didn't Lucian send someone to look after you? Aubrey whimpered pitifully, I'm at a hotel. I accidentally fell and appeared to have worsened my previous injuries. I called Lucian, but he told me he had work in the afternoon. Since my dad is still mad at me, I have no one else to turn to but you, Sonia frowned. You're at a hotel. Following Aubrey's argument with Samuel, Sonia had contacted her a few times before to express her concern. However, she was completely unaware that Aubrey had been arranged to stay in a hotel. At that moment, listening to Aubrey describing the pain in her arm, heartache, and frustration churned in Sonia. She was displeased that Lucian was mistreating the daughter-in-law she rooted for. Aubrey answered with a soft yet. Hen, she intentionally put up a thoughtful pretense by defending Lucian. Lucian is swamped with work most of the time, so it doesn't matter where I stay. Besides, Essie harbors an aversion to me now, so I want to avoid upsetting her by living under the same roof with them. As soon as she finished speaking, Sonia's voice sounded through the phone's speaker. Where are you? I'll go and pick you up at once. A hint of smugness flashed across Aubrey's face after she received her desired response. Still, she deliberately spoke in a timid voice when informing Sonia of the name of the hotel she was staying at. With that, Sonia hung up the call and ordered the driver to send her to the hotel Aubrey was at. On the way to her destination, anger boiled within Sonia's chest. I thought I placed Aubrey in good hands by asking Lucian to care for her. However, Little did I expect him to leave her alone and neglected in a hotel. He didn't even take the time to visit Aubrey when she's suffering from a relapse. Is there anything else? That night, after Lucian picked up Estella and returned home, he saw his mother and Aubrey sitting on the couch. Rage was seen on Sonia's face, while Aubrey looked troubled. The latter stood and greeted, "Lucian, Essie, you're back." Expressionlessly, Lucian nodded at her and turned to look at his mother. As for Estella, after she saw Aubrey, she timidly hid behind her father and didn't even greet Sonia. Holding Estella's hand, he wordlessly comforted the child as he asked in a deep voice, "Why are you here with Aubrey, Mom?" Upon hearing her son's question, Sonia's scowl grew more intense. "You're still wondering why the two of us are here? I entrusted Aubrey to you, yet you refused to let her stay at home. To make matters worse, you didn't even check up on her when her injury relapsed." Annoyed, Lucian felt his head throb. "I already asked someone to send her to the hospital, but she didn't want to go." He was telling the truth, but the person he sent informed him that Aubrey refused to go to the hospital. Now that I think about it, she was probably waiting for Mom to go over. Mom certainly didn't disappoint her and directly brought her here. Aubrey is injured and is in trouble with her family again. How can you expect her to go to the hospital alone with no one to talk to and no one to take care of her? Before Aubrey could explain her decision, Sonia had already provided a reason for her. Aubrey was delighted, but she still pretentiously put on a piteous look. "Then what do you want me to do?" Lucian couldn't be bothered to continue this pointless argument with his mother. After all, Sonia always put Aubrey's interests above everything else whenever the matter concerned the latter. Any further arguments about the matter would just be a waste of time. Sonia glanced at Aubrey before turning to face him. "Let Aubrey stay at your place for now." Estella frowned and tightened her grip on her father's hand as a sign of protest. "I only want Ms. Jarvis to live with us. I don't want to stay with this bad lady." Naturally, Lucian knew what was on his daughter's mind. He patted her head before speaking to his mother. "I can ask Catalina to take care of her in a hotel. Just forget about letting her live here." Aubrey's lashes trembled before she tugged on the corner of Sonia's shirt pitifully. "I think I should go back to the hotel, Mrs. Farwell. I can take care of myself." Aubrey's sensibility further reinforced Sonia's idea of letting the younger woman stay. "I've already checked out of her hotel room. Aubrey's arm is injured. Why are you making things difficult for her? You spend your entire day in the company, so what's the difference between her staying here and the hotel?" Before Lucian could retort, Sonia stood, turned to Aubrey, and reminded, "I'll be going back now. You stay in the manor. Catalina will take good care of you." Aubrey stared at Lucian cautiously before nodding at Sonia with a troubled expression. Sonia approached her son and asked, "You're not going to walk me out?" With a frown, Lucian asked Catalina to take care of Estella before exiting the house with his mother. "Is there anything else?" He knew she had something to say to him if she specifically asked him to walk her out. Slowly, Sonia turned around and glared furiously at him upon hearing what he said. Aversion. Lucian more or less knew what she wanted to say, so he furrowed his eyebrows silently and waited. With a serious expression, Sonia uttered, "I'm still going to say the same thing, Lucian." Aubrey has waited for you for 6 years, and things have been hard for her. No matter what happens, you can't disappoint her. They had had that same conversation many times before, so much so that it gave him a headache every time he heard it. It also made him lose the drive to argue with her. She continued to speak as he listened silently. Inside the mansion, Estella stared at the woman sitting on the couch and timidly grabbed the edge of Catalina's shirt while wearing a wary expression. Upon noticing the girl's aversion toward her, Aubrey felt displeased, but she still pretended to be nice. "Look, I brought you a gift, Essie." Then she pulled out a doll from her bag. "Do you like it?" Without hesitation, the girl shook her head. "I'm not going to like anything this bad lady gives me." When Aubrey saw the girl shaking her head, the expression on her face froze for a moment before returning to normal. "It's fine if you don't like it. I'll take you out next time to buy whatever you like." In response, Estella cowered behind Catalina wordlessly. Ms. Estella just returned from school, Ms. Pearson. She's probably tired. You should wait here in the living room while I send Ms. Estella back to her room first. Catalina watched Estella grow up, so she understood the girl's emotions very well. She could tell Estella was afraid, so she immediately stood in front of Estella and shielded the little girl as she spoke to Aubrey politely. The moment she finished speaking, Aubrey frowned. "I'll send Essie upstairs. I have something I want to talk to her about." Then, Aubrey stood and approached the girl. Estella grabbed onto the edge of Catalina's shirt even tighter when she saw Aubrey getting close. Defiance was written all over her face. Catalina was distressed when she saw Estella's expression. However, due to her identity, she couldn't say anything. She could only watch as Aubrey approached and stretched out her hand toward Estella. "I'll send you upstairs, Essie." Aubrey put on her most amicable smile with the intention of changing the girl's attitude toward her. To her surprise, Estella still didn't take her hand even after she waited patiently for a while. Instead, the little girl cowered further behind Catalina. In response, Aubrey's eyebrows creased imperceptibly as she suppressed the rage in her heart. Patiently, she squatted down and stared into Estella's eyes apologetically. "I can understand why you don't like me, Essie. I didn't know how to deal with children in the past, and I wasn't patient enough with you. I hope you can forgive me. Let's learn how to get along with each other, okay?" Pursing her lips, Estella still shook her head. Aubrey had to dig her nails into her palm in secret to stifle her raging fury. How dare she reject me when I'm asking her to get along with me nicely? It seems like she has forgotten how I used to punish her. If Catalina weren't around right now, I would have shown her the consequences of disobeying me. Children were usually sensitive to adults' emotions. Despite Aubrey's attempt at suppressing her emotions, Estella could still sense her anger. Thus, the girl promptly and cautiously tightened her grip on Catalina's shirt. Sensing the girl's emotions, Catalina could only protect her silently. She didn't have the nerve to say anything. "Be a good girl, okay, Essie? I'm going to be your mommy in the future. Don't you want to get along with your mommy?" Biting the bullet, Aubrey used the ace up her sleeve. She thought that would make the girl cooperate, but to her surprise, the moment she ended her sentence, Estella's detestation became even more obvious. filled with remorse. Initially, Estella only hid behind Catalina, but after she heard what Aubrey said about being her future mother, her expression instantly changed. She glared at Aubrey angrily before running upstairs by herself. Aubrey's face fell as she watched the girl leave. Catalina breathed an inward sigh of relief when she saw Estella running away. Ms. Estella's emotions are often unstable. I hope you'll forgive her, Ms. Pearson. In response, Aubrey flashed her a forceful smile. Amidst her frustration, she heard sounds at the mansion's entrance. Subsequently, she saw Lucian stepping back into the building. Has Mrs. Farwell left already, Lucian? Aubrey made swift adjustments to her expression before staring at the person at the entrance pitifully. After shooting a glance at her, Lucian nodded indifferently and turned to Catalina. Where's Essie? He asked Catalina to take care of Estella before he went out, which was why he was wondering where his daughter had gone to. Catalina subconsciously glanced at Aubrey before informing, Ms. Estella went back to her room. The man furrowed his brows. What did Aubrey do to Essie again? Since Mrs. Farwell has already left, should I? Aubrey intentionally shot a piteous look at Lucian, wanting to ask if she should stay or go. Instead of looking at her, he relayed an order to Catalina. Arrange a guest room for Ms. Pearson. Catalina was briefly shocked as she didn't expect Lucian to allow Aubrey to stay. Still, she complied with his order. She was aware of Estella's and Lucian's attitudes toward Aubrey, so she prepared a room that was furthest from their bedrooms for Aubrey to stay in. When Aubrey heard that she could stay, joy leaped into her heart as she promised, I promise to not cause any trouble. Lucian nodded coldly. Earlier at the mansion's entrance, his mother spent a long time convincing him to let Aubrey stay. She always managed to counter him with the right words, no matter what he said. In the end, he had no choice but to agree. However, he only agreed to let Aubrey stay. That didn't mean he was going to change his attitude toward her. Soon, Catalina finished tidying the guest room and asked Aubrey to go and take a look. Instead of doing that, Aubrey stared at Lucian. My arm is injured. Can you help me carry my luggage? Frowning, Lucian grabbed her luggage indifferently and followed her upstairs. Displeasure swiftly flashed past Aubrey's eyes when she saw the room Catalina had arranged for her. Why is it so far away from Lucian's room? This guest room is easier to clean up, and it's bigger. It'll be much more convenient for you to stay here, Ms. Pearson, Catalina explained with a grin. With a forced smile, Aubrey thanked her. Seeing that Lucian was about to leave after he put the luggage down, she called out to him, Lucian. He turned back to look at her. I tried to talk to Essie just now, but looks like she still dislikes me. Can I take Essie on a shopping trip to buy stuff for her tomorrow to make up for my past mistakes? Her face was filled with remorse as she gazed at him cautiously. Unfortunately for her, Lucian was unmoved. That won't be necessary. Essie doesn't need anything for the moment. You should focus on taking care of yourself and return home soon. He then strode out of the room without giving her a chance to speak. Aubrey's expression darkened as she stared at Lucian's back. Even though he had agreed to let her stay in the manor, it was obvious he intended to ignore her presence. Of course, she wasn't going to allow that to happen. Meanwhile, after Lucian left the room, he strode to Estella's bedroom before knocking on the door. "Open up, Essie." When Estella heard her father's voice, she recalled what Aubrey had said earlier. In response, she turned around in a huff, facing the door with her back. After waiting for some time, Lucian still hadn't gotten a response from her. She must be sulking again. What a headache. Both my mother and my daughter are just taking turns to give me a hard time tonight. Lucian waited a little longer, and still, there was no response. So, he grabbed the key, unlocked the door, and entered the room. When he entered the room, he saw his daughter sitting on the bed while hugging her knees, curling into a ball. From his angle, she looked so tiny. The look in Lucian's eyes softened when he saw Estella sulking. He spoke tenderly. "Grandma needed to talk to me just now, so I left you alone for a while. Tell me what happened, okay?" The little girl shot her father a glare upon seeing that he had entered the room without gaining her approval. Alas, she was too tiny and adorable to be intimidating, so the look in her eyes didn't scare Lucian at all. It just came off as amusing to him. Seeing the smile on Lucian's face made Estella's temper spike. "I hate you, Daddy." He raised his eyebrows slightly. "What did I do wrong?" She pouted. "You said you're going to pursue Ms. Jarvis." With an indifferent nod, he replied, "That's what I've been doing." Estella's rage quelled when she heard his response, but still, suspicions surfaced in her eyes. "But she said she's going to be my mommy in the future." Of course, both of them knew who she was. Lucian's expression turned gloomy when he heard that. Time and again, he told Aubrey that there was no way love would blossom between them. Yet, during the few short minutes when he wasn't around, she actually had the audacity to say such things to his daughter. Staring at her father, Estella waited for his answer. "I'm not going to marry her," Lucian promised in a deep voice. "I let her stay here because that's what Grandma wants me to do. Don't worry, I'll send her away as soon as possible." Only when Estella heard that was she at ease. Pursing her lips, she nodded, though there was still a touch of aggrievement on her face. He patted her head. "All right, let's go downstairs and eat." Hesitation flashed past her face. "I don't want to. I don't want to eat with that obnoxious lady." Lucian saw through her and comforted her. "If you don't like her, you're free to ignore her when I'm around. He won't dare to do anything to you." As he spoke, suspicions filled his heart. "After what Aubrey did to Essie last time, I finally know that she has always been acting in front of me, although I'm still not sure what she did to Essie behind my back that caused Essie to hate her so much. Or was that usually how she treated Essie whenever they were alone in the past?" When his train of thought ended there, the atmosphere around him became thick with tension. Estella was feeling pretty hungry, so after she heard her father's words, she hesitated for a few seconds before following him downstairs. No one found out. Aubrey was already waiting at the dining table downstairs. When she saw Lucian and Estella coming downstairs, she faced the girl apologetically. "I'm sorry, Essie. I think I said the wrong thing again earlier." Estella grabbed her father's hand tightly as she glanced at him, non-verbally asking him if she really could ignore the woman. He patted her head in consolation and pulled her to his side. Both of them ignored Aubrey. The atmosphere at the dining table was incredibly awkward. Aubrey was enraged when she saw the father and daughter duo sit down to eat without paying even a bit of attention to her, as though she wasn't there. However, she couldn't vent her anger and even had to try and please the little girl. "You're still growing, Essie. You need to eat more so you'll grow taller." Wearing a fake smile, she put a piece of pork on the girl's plate. Estella paused in her tracks as she stared at the pork on her plate. Lucian scrunched his brows as he removed the pork from his daughter's plate and explained apathetically, "Essie doesn't like pork." Aubrey's expression shifted slightly. "This is the Farwell residence. There's no way the chef would make something Essie doesn't like to eat. She just doesn't like the food I took for her." Even though she realized that, she couldn't complain, so she just gritted her teeth and apologized, "Is that so? I had no idea. I'm sorry." Lucian nodded expressionlessly. "When I'm not around, Catalina will take care of Essie, so you don't need to worry about her. If you have time, spend it talking with your family." Pinching her palm, Aubrey agreed. After the awkward dinner was over, Lucian brought Estella back upstairs. Aubrey's scowl intensified as she watched them leave. As much as she didn't want to admit it, his actions so far had clearly shown her that he had no feelings for her. In fact, it was even possible that he saw her as a liability. That thought filled her heart with despair. "Do you still want to eat, Ms. Pearson?" Catalina asked in concern when she saw Aubrey remain still at the dining table for a long while. Suppressing the rage in her heart, Aubrey smiled at her. "I haven't been able to sleep well for these 2 days. Can you bring me a bottle of red wine?" Catalina didn't give that request too much thought before grabbing an opened bottle of red wine from a wine cabinet filled with alcohol meant to serve guests. After thanking Catalina, Aubrey returned to her room with a decanter and the bottle of red wine. "Right now, only wine can lift my spirits and make me temporarily forget about Lucian." With that thought in mind, she glugged down the bottle of wine like water. She didn't care how she was supposed to drink red wine and just gulped it down. Not long after, the after effect of the red wine kicked in. Aubrey's cheeks turned red, her eyes filled with drunkenness. All she could think of was, ironically, Lucian. Due to her state of tipsiness, she became even more rash than usual. As she thought about Lucian, she staggered out of the room in a wobbly manner. He should be in the study right now. With one hand pressing on the wall to support herself, she stumbled toward the study and muttered, "Lucian." Lucian usually had to work even when he was at home, so the second floor usually didn't have any housekeepers around. That was why no one noticed Aubrey was acting oddly. She arrived at the door of the study without any trouble and stared at the tightly shut door before knocking on it amidst her inebriation. Inside the study, Lucian, eyebrows furrowed, was staring at his unfinished work for the day. Suddenly, he heard a set of footsteps approaching the door. Shortly after, a loud knocking sound was heard. He moved his line of sight away from the computer and frowned at the door. The housekeepers of the Farwell residence normally would have rested at that time. Even if that weren't the case, no one would disturb him willy-nilly while he worked in the study. Not only that, the knocking was really loud, which could only mean Aubrey was the one at the door. What is that woman up to now? Lucian thought. The knocking continued. He had just gone through much trouble to tuck Estella in, so he still stood and opened the door to prevent her from being woken up by the relentless knocks. When he opened the door, he saw an intoxicated Aubrey at the entrance. Lucian had no idea how much she had drunk, but he could tell the smell of wine was creeping into the study. Upon seeing her, he stared at her with a frown and spoke in a deep voice. "You're drunk. You should return to your room and rest." He then prepared to turn around and close the door. To his surprise, the moment he turned around, Aubrey hugged his waist. Lucian stopped in his tracks, stared at Aubrey's arms around his waist, and ordered coldly, "Let go." She was still in a daze as she spoke. "I won't. I love you, Lucian. Don't cancel the engagement, okay? What's so good about Roxanne, anyway? He left you back then while I've waited for you for 6 years," that was the same thing Sonia said to him. Even though Aubrey meant what she said, Lucian was still unmoved by her words. In fact, a touch of disdain even flashed past his eyes. For 6 years, this woman put up an act in front of me and bullied Essie behind my back, yet she has the gall to mention it. Lucian, she hugged him from behind, putting all her weight on him. Every single breath of hers sprayed the stench of alcohol on his body. Sensing her movements, his face fell, and he grabbed her wrists forcefully without hesitation. "Ugh!" she grimaced and let go of him reflexively. Holding her injured wrist, she stumbled backward with a pained expression. Expressionlessly, Lucian turned around and stared down at her before warning in a cold voice, "The only reason I let you stay is because of my mother. If you behave yourself, I'll allow you to stay until you can return to your home. If you continue acting as you please, don't blame me when I ask someone to chase you away." Aubrey regained some of her senses because of the pain. Fear filled her eyes when she heard what he said, and she apologized instinctively, "I'm sorry, Lucian. It's my fault. I drank too much earlier. Don't chase me out." Gazing at her coldly, he ordered, "Get back to your room." Aubrey still didn't want to give up as she stared at him pitifully. "My legs are so weak right now. Can you send me back to my room?" When she finished her sentence, the man before her didn't immediately reply. Instead, he just raised his eyebrow wordlessly. For a moment, she was delighted because she thought he was going to say yes. However, to her dismay, Lucian asked a housekeeper to send her back to her room. She scowled in response because she didn't want a housekeeper to see her wretched state. Nevertheless, she didn't dare to say anything after seeing his frosty expression. Thus, she allowed the housekeeper to bring her back to her room. He promptly returned to the study after that. His eyebrows furrowed when the stench of alcohol rushed into his nose. To get rid of the smell, he opened the windows. The next morning, Lucian heard a series of careful knocks on his door when he woke up. The only person who would do that was Estella. As expected, he saw the girl standing in front of his bedroom with puppy dog eyes when he went to open the door. Upon seeing him, she greeted sweetly, "Good morning, Daddy." Nodding slightly, he patted her head. "What's the matter? Why did you wake up so early today?" After glancing at Aubrey's room, she lifted her head and stared at her father. "I want to meet Ms. Jarvis. Take me to see her." The last thing she wanted was to spend time with Aubrey, and even the mere thought of having breakfast with the woman filled her heart with disgust. A frown marred Lucian's face as he knew what the girl was thinking and understood her feelings. However, he needed to attend an important meeting that morning. He would be late if he sent his daughter to Roxanne's place before going to the company. Thus, his initial plan was to let the girl stay in the house, but when he lowered his head, he saw a pleading look in her eyes. In the end, he couldn't bring himself to say no to that face. "I have something to tend to at work today. So, you'll come with me to the company before I ask Mr. Lawson to take you there. Is that okay?" he asked. While Estella didn't want to stay with Aubrey, she was still an obedient girl. So, she nodded when she heard her father had work-related matters to deal with. Patting the girl's head, Lucian turned around and went to wash up. As for Estella, she waited at the door docilely. Meanwhile, Aubrey had just woken up. Due to her excessive drinking last night, she was groggy and had a nasty headache. The cold attitude Lucian gave her last night was still fresh in her mind. Thinking about how coldly he treated her enraged her instantly. It also made her panic because, if things continued in that trajectory, her position might really be replaced by Roxanne. "Even if he gives me the cold shoulder again, I must put up with it. I must change Lucian's attitude toward me." As that thought came into mind, she ignored her headache, swiftly freshened up, and prepared to head downstairs. She could only see him during the morning and night because he would spend the rest of the day in the company. That was why she couldn't miss out on any chance to meet him. When she left her room, she saw Estella, who was waiting for Lucian in front of his bedroom. Thus, Aubrey slowed her pace, adjusted her expression, and approached the girl with a smile. "You're up early, Essie." She tried to caress the girl's head when she got close enough. However, when Estella saw the woman, she had her guard up like a porcupine raising its body's quills. Then, as she regarded her warily, she inched into her father's room. Aubrey retracted her hand and paused in her tracks, but the smile on her face remained. "Are you waiting for your father? How about I bring you downstairs?" Without hesitation, the girl shook her head with an expression of clear defiance. Aubrey was already suffering from a terrible headache, so when she was once again rejected by Estella, the smile on her face disappeared. Glancing at the bedroom, she surmised Lucian was probably still inside the bathroom, meaning he wouldn't be able to see what was going on outside. At that realization, Aubrey's expression turned grim. "Listen to me obediently and follow me downstairs." When Aubrey revealed her true colors and put on a frightening expression, Estella jumped in fear and wanted to go to Lucian. However, her wrist was grabbed by Aubrey, and she couldn't break free. Staring coldly at the girl, Aubrey uttered, "If you don't want to suffer, you better obey me. Don't piss me off, do you understand?" Inside the bathroom, Lucian was taking a shower when he called Roxanne. He knew how much of a workaholic she was, so he was worried Roxanne might not be there when Caden sent Estella over. The little girl would throw a temper tantrum if she didn't get to see Roxanne. That was why he was calling her, to make sure she was around. Thankfully, she picked up the call rather quickly. "What's the matter, Lucian?" Roxanne sounded groggy. She might have just woken up, or she was woken up by the call. Amused by her sleepy tone, Lucian apologized softly, "Did I wake you up? Sorry." She yawned slightly and sat up in bed. "It's okay. I should be waking up at this time, anyway. I think I overslept a little. Why are you calling me early in the morning? Essie wants to go to your place. Do you have time during the morning for that? If I's not convenient for you, I can ask her to stay in the company with me." After spending time with Roxanne for a while, Lucian figured out her preferred way of interacting between the two of them. Therefore, he would use a negotiating tone whenever he spoke to her. Roxanne pondered for a while before agreeing. "Got it. I'll be at home in the morning." He was astounded when he heard her agree to it readily. Raising his eyebrows in surprise, he hummed in response and told her the estimated time that Estella would arrive before ending the call. After hanging up, Lucian stepped out of the bathroom and glanced at his daughter, who was still at the door. Aubrey was still threatening the girl at that moment and was shocked to see Lucian emerging from the bathroom. Hastily, her expression changed as she greeted him guiltily, "Lucian." The moment he saw her, he remembered how she pestered him last night. With a cold tone, he asked, "Why are you here?" Her eyelashes quivered before she explained cautiously, "I saw Essie standing here, so I thought I should come over and talk with her." Then, she flashed a fake smile at the girl. "Isn't that right, Essie?" Pursing her lips, Estella glanced at the woman before wordlessly running toward her father, hiding behind him while grabbing his pants. The look in Lucian's eyes darkened as he regarded his daughter's restless demeanor. He then glimpsed the woman at the door. Even though his gaze merely swept past Aubrey's face briefly, it still made her tremble. She clenched her hand tightly to prevent herself from losing her composure. He was tired of dealing with her, so he just said, "I'll bring Essie downstairs later. You can go down first." Upon hearing that, she parted her lips to say something but didn't dare to. Silently, she shot a glare at Estella before descending the stairs. With that, only Estella and Lucian were left in the room. "What did you two talk about with each other earlier?" He looked at her with a frown. "She was clearly afraid when she ran toward me just now." Pressing her lips into a thin line, the girl shook her head, refusing to talk. She appeared similar to how she used to act when her autism was severe. Lucian's heart dropped when he saw that. Instead of asking any more questions, he wordlessly comforted Estella by caressing her head. Not long after, Lucian brought Estella downstairs. Aubrey was already sitting at the dining table. When she saw them, she stifled the displeasure in her heart and smiled at them before pointing to the spot next to her. "Come over here, Essie. Let's eat breakfast together." She thought her threat from earlier would make the girl listen to her. To her surprise, the little girl blatantly ignored her. Grabbing onto the hem of her father's shirt, Estella followed him to the dining table and allowed him to lift her and plop her down on the seat next to him. Aubrey's expression froze when she saw neither of them had any intention of paying attention to her. "You're heading to work in a while, right, Lucian?" she asked a few seconds later, refusing to give up. He nodded indifferently. Aubrey's rage dissipated slightly when she at least got some response out of him. With a smile, she suggested, "Then let me take care of you today, Essie. I'll make sure you'll have tons of fun." The instant she ended her sentence, she saw Estella glancing at her cautiously before looking back down and eating silently. In the past, when the girl's condition hadn't improved yet, she tended to remain silent when Aubrey talked to her. In Aubrey's opinion, the girl's behavior had worsened to the point of straight-up disrespecting her. Even threats no longer worked. Realizing that Estella had changed, Aubrey was enraged, and she blamed everything on Roxanne. "If not for that, this brat wouldn't have defied me. The brat clearly thinks she has someone supporting her now, so she could do as she pleases. It's all because of that. I lost my best way into the Farwell family because of her." Meanwhile, she was also mad at the stubborn little girl. "I remember Lucian's relationship with that was quite awkward when she first returned to the country. The reason their relationship improved was because of this brat. Even though I treated her so well, she ungratefully insisted on clinging to that. If not for her, that wouldn't have had so many opportunities to spend time with Lucian and develop their relationship to what it is today." As her thoughts ran wild, Aubrey started staring at Estella with hatred in her eyes. The girl was sensitive enough to sense Aubrey's hostility. Thus, she put the spoon down and tugged at her father's sleeve to indicate that she wanted to head to Roxanne's as soon as possible. Aubrey rapidly changed her expression and smiled warmly in response to that. Lucian glanced at her. "There's no need for that. Essie will be following me today." Without giving Aubrey a chance to speak, he put his fork down and stood up. "I'll be leaving with Essie now." When Estella heard that, she got down from her chair, grabbed her father's sleeve, and left the mansion with him. Aubrey watched the two of them leave with a gloomy look. After sitting at the table for a while, she got up as well. "No, I must follow them and see where the two of them are going." "Miss Pearson!" Catalina called out in confusion upon seeing Aubrey leave when she barely touched her meal. Without turning to look at Catalina, Aubrey replied, "I'm going home." After that, she stepped out of the mansion. Fortunately for her, she exited the building at the right time. Lucian's car had just left the residence. Thus, she speedily went to the side of the road, hailed a taxi, entered it, and asked the driver to tail Lucian's car, his and her 751. "Take good care of Essie." During the drive to his office, Lucian cast a glance at his daughter through the rearview mirror and furrowed his brows. "I'll send you there," Lucian said in a low voice. Initially, he wanted to ask Caden to send her over. However, judging by Estella's current state, Lucian reckoned it would be difficult for Caden to deal with her later on. He gave Caden a call right after. It did not take long for Caden to pick up the call. "Mr. Farwell, when will you arrive?" Lucian frowned and said, "Postpone the meeting in the morning." Caden was stumped. The meeting in the morning was important, and yet Lucian had ordered to postpone it. "Postpone it by an hour will do," Lucian added. "I'm going to drop Essie off." Caden hurriedly agreed to make the arrangements. He had been working with Lucian for years, and he was already used to his boss prioritizing Estella in every aspect of his life. After hanging up the call, Lucian turned the car around and headed toward Roxanne's place. Following closely behind Lucian's car was Aubrey in a taxi. The fury burning in her chest was slightly appeased when she noticed that Lucian was heading to his office. However, upon noticing that he made an abrupt U-turn, Aubrey stiffened in response. Even though she had never been to Roxanne's place, Aubrey had a hunch that Lucian was heading toward the woman's place right then. Aubrey's face fell when she was hit by the pang of realization. She ordered the driver in an icy tone, "Keep up with that car." The driver nodded hastily and tailed behind Lucian as told. As expected, his car slowly came to a stop in front of Roxanne's place. Lucian led Estella out of the car and rang the doorbell. He was greeted soon after, perhaps because he had made a call prior to coming. "Why is it you? Didn't you say you will ask Caden to drop Essie off?" Roxanne was slightly surprised at the sight of Lucian, and she gave him a confounded look. "I think it's better for me to drop her off myself," Lucian explained. Roxanne was perplexed by his explanation and lowered her head to look at Estella. Only then did she notice something off with the little girl. Estella would always greet Roxanne whenever she met her. This time, however, the little girl merely kept quiet as she stared at Roxanne piteously. It would appear as if the girl had returned to her autistic self. Essie. Roxanne's heart constricted at the sight, worried that the little girl's condition had relapsed. Estella finally snapped out of her daze when she heard Roxanne. The little girl blinked her eyes in distress and edged closer to Roxanne. "Ms. Jarvis," Roxanne heaved a sigh of relief and patted her head. She looked at Lucian and asked, "What's the matter with Essie?" Lucian frowned. He did not know how to tell Roxanne the fact that Aubrey had moved into the Farwell residence. He remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "I guess she'll tell you later." Roxanne was even more befuddled by his words. Seeing as the man did not seem to wish to divulge further, she did not egg him on and merely nodded in response. Archie and Benny were standing right behind Roxanne. They were worried to see the state that Estella was in as well. "I have a meeting later on. So, I'll have to get going," Lucian said in a low voice. "I'll be leaving Essie to you now. I will come and pick her up in the evening." Roxanne nodded in response. However, when they met each other's gaze, she seemed to notice that there was something odd about Lucian's demeanor. "This cannot go on." In truth, Lucian was stifling a hint of a laugh as he noticed that Roxanne's lipstick was drawn out of line. It seems like she was still in a daze when she was doing her makeup. She doesn't have a clue that her lipstick is out of line. He felt the urge to tease the woman when he saw the blank expression on her face. Lucian let his mischievous side get the better of him and reached out his hand. Upon noticing that Lucian's hand was mere inches away from her face, Roxanne flinched and hurriedly took a step back to keep some distance between them. His hand was left hanging mid-air, and he tightened a brow in displeasure. "Do you have anything else, Mr. Farwell?" Roxanne asked warily. A ghost of a smile fleeted across his eyes as he noticed Roxanne getting all flustered. "Your lipstick is out of line," he said impassively. Roxanne's face was tinged pink as she instinctively lowered her head to avoid meeting Lucian's gaze. "Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Farwell. I'll deal with it myself." Then, she inclined her head at him as a sign of goodbye before turning around to head inside the house with the kids. As he watched the four of them go back inside the house, Lucian could not help but replay the way Roxanne blushed when he tried to touch her. Pleased with her response, he grinned. It was almost time for his meeting after he dropped Estella off. Hence, Lucian turned around and headed for the office. In the meantime, Opposite the mansion, Aubrey was sitting in a taxi parked by the roadside with a dark look on her face. She had just witnessed Lucian's interaction with that wretched woman. He's always cold and indifferent toward me, but he's like a whole different person when he's in front of that. When she saw that Lucian's hand was about to touch Roxanne's lips, Aubrey almost could not restrain her urge to storm over and push her away from Lucian. "Miss, do you still want to follow the car?" As Lucian's car started to drive away, the driver did not know whether he should continue tailing him. Aubrey snapped out of her daze and glared at Roxanne's door. "No. Just send me back," she said in a cold voice. Then, the driver headed back to the Farwell residence via the same route. When Aubrey arrived home, Catalina was surprised to see her return so soon. Aubrey then recalled the way Catalina tried to defend Estella the night before. Frustrated, she shot a daggered look at Catalina. Catalina could sense Aubrey's hostility. Though bewildered, she said nothing and retreated to the side as she watched Aubrey head upstairs. As Aubrey ascended the stairs, her mind was filled with the infuriating images of Lucian being gentle toward Roxanne. And that little. She acts so meekly in front of me, and yet she throws herself at that woman the first chance she gets. If not for her, Lucian would not have gone to see that wretched woman so early in the morning. It's all that little S fault. Aubrey's face contorted with a deranged look. She thought that a little threat would make Estella behave and listen to her. However, she did not expect Estella to grow so brazen with Roxanne backing her up, even to the extent of ignoring her completely. "I can't let this go on. I have to teach that little a lesson so that she knows whose side she should take." With that thought in mind, Aubrey turned her attention to Estella's room with a grim look in her eyes. Acquisition by the Damaris family. Meanwhile, after Lucian left Roxanne's house, he went straight to the office just in time for the scheduled meeting. After the meeting was over, Lucian had just come out of the conference room when he saw Caden approaching him from a distance. The latter seemed somewhat perturbed upon seeing Lucian. "Mr. Farwell." Lucian's brows furrowed slightly. "What's the matter?" Still wearing a troubled facial expression, Caden stated, "There's something wrong with the project we have with Queen Group." Lucian's expression darkened as he strode back to his office, and Caden silently followed behind him into the office before closing the door behind him. "What's the problem?" Lucian inquired in a deep voice. Previously, their collaboration with Queen Group had been progressing smoothly. Caden answered, "The people from the pharmaceutical company in the Northwest changed their minds at the last minute. They don't plan to accept the acquisition's conditions we offered." Lucian's frown deepened the moment he heard the news. The acquisition of that pharmaceutical company was a crucial part of the project. In order to make it a success, Farwell Group and Queen Group put a lot of effort into it. They even made multiple concessions on the purchase price. After several negotiations, both sides reached an agreement, and the only thing that was left to do was sign the contract. However, the people from the pharmaceutical company went back on their word abruptly. "Why? Did the other party state their reason?" Lucian probed, frowning. The look of perturbation on Caden's face became more obvious. "It's because of the Damaris family. The Damaris family's newly established research institute has been in contact with the pharmaceutical company lately. I don't know what kind of conditions they have been offered. The Damaris family. Upon hearing the mention of the Damaris family, Lucian couldn't help but think of Jack. The previous scandal Roxanne has not been entirely clarified. Only the part concerning her medical skills was clarified. Nevertheless, none of the parties has ever given the public a reasonable explanation regarding her relationship with Jack. And now, the Damaris family is interrupting my project. As the thought flashed across Lucian's mind, his face turned grim, and the atmosphere around him became thick with tension. Mr. Farwell, should we continue to increase the purchase price? Caden asked tentatively. Only then did Lucian snap out of it and start to ponder the question. He then shook his head and walked to the window. No, let's wait and see what happens first. Find out what conditions the Damaris family has offered to that company. If we keep blindly compromising, it will only cause that company to ask for more. Caden nodded in acknowledgement and suddenly thought of something. He said hesitantly, I have a way to find out what the Damaris family's conditions are, but, seeing the hesitant look on his face, Lucian asked in confusion, what is it? Caden took a quick, cautious glance at Lucian before mustering the courage to speak his mind. I remember that Ms. Jarvis is involved in the new project of the Damaris family's company. Perhaps she might know something about the matter. We can ask her about it. The look in Lucian's eyes darkened when he heard Caden's suggestion. Indeed, Roxanne has joined the project established by the Damaris family's research institute. She even has a close relationship with Jack, but that doesn't mean that I have to make use of her, not to mention this is a business matter. Noticing Lucian's countenance, Caden immediately knew what the former was going to say. Before Lucian could speak, Caden beat him to it. Don't worry. I will ask around through other means. Lucian nodded. Do that as soon as possible. Caden respectfully agreed and turned around to walk out of the office. Promise me first. At the same time, Roxanne was spending time with the 3 children in her house. Since Estella headed inside, she had been unhappy. No matter what Roxanne and the other 2 little ones said to her, the girl still seemed to be low-spirited. Essie, can you tell me what's bothering you? Roxanne stopped playing games with the children and brought Estella over to sit on the carpet. Trailing behind them, Archie and Benny were worried as well. After hearing their mother's question, the little boys stared at Estella expectantly as they waited for her answer. Estella pursed her lips and thought of Aubrey, who was currently staying at her home, before looking at the beautiful Roxanne in front of her. If Ms. Jarvis knows that Ms. Pearson lives in my house, Ms. Jarvis will definitely be upset. Daddy is still pursuing Ms. Jarvis. It'd be bad if she misunderstands. Estella's expression was filled with hesitation as she considered the consequences. Noticing that Estella seemed to have some concerns, Roxanne frowned worriedly. No matter what it is, you can tell me. I'll surely help you. Archie and Benny, who were standing aside, echoed, count us in as well. All of us will help you. Essie, don't be sad. When Estella heard their words of consolation and thought of how badly Aubrey treated her in the morning, she was aggrieved. Why did Daddy let Ms. Pearson live in the house instead of trying to get Ms. Jarvis, Archie, and Benny to move in? I want to live with Ms. Jarvis, Archie, and Benny. Essie, if you don't say anything, we'll be worried sick. Archie looked at Estella seriously, his tone somber. Upon hearing his words, Estella frowned and glanced at Roxanne anxiously. Cooperatively, Roxanne put on a troubled expression. Ms. Jarvis, seeing that Roxanne was concerned about her, Estella became anxious. Despite that, the girl was still worried that Roxanne might misunderstand. Estella's hesitation caused Roxanne to steel herself and act hurt. The latter rose to her feet and said in a disappointed tone, "Essie, since you're not willing to talk about it, I won't force you. I'll prepare lunch for you all." With that, she took a step forward, ready to leave. Just as she turned around, Estella grabbed her shirt. "Ms. Jarvis, don't go. I'll tell you." Estella spoke pitifully. With her back facing Estella, Roxanne raised her brow and turned her head to the side to discreetly flash a smile at Archie and Benny. Seeing that Roxanne's plan had worked out, Archie and Benny were relieved. Hay then sat down solemnly as they waited for Estella to pour her heart out. When Estella saw Roxanne sitting back down beside her, the girl said gingerly, "Ms. Jarvis, you have to promise me first that you won't be angry with Daddy." Without knowing the context, Roxanne had no idea why Estella said that. The former couldn't help but frown as she wondered why Estella was upset. "She asked me not to get angry with Lucian. That means this has something to do with that man." At the mention of Lucian, Roxanne inevitably thought of his attitude every time he spoke to Estella. "Did your daddy scold you?" What Roxanne could think of was this possibility. Estella shook her head vigorously. Estella's denial only served to make Roxanne even more puzzled. "Other than this reason, why else will I be angry? Essie even specifically asked me not to get angry." Judging from her expression, it seems to be a grave matter. "Do you dislike Aubrey? So what's going on, exactly?" questioned Benny impatiently. However, Estella simply stared at Roxanne, hoping to get a solid answer from the woman. The look in Roxanne's eyes softened when she met the girl's gaze. She nodded. "Okay. I won't get angry with Lucian." Only after that did Estella finally reveal, "The evil woman's staying with us." Archie and Benny were both stunned when they heard Estella, but as soon as they regained their senses, they realized who the girl was talking about. On the other hand, Roxanne's face was filled with puzzlement as she wondered who the person in question was. "It's Aubrey." Benny was furious when he remembered how the woman bullied his mother. As much as he wanted to, he could not figure out why his father would take Aubrey in. Roxanne's eyebrows furrowed slightly when she got the answer to her question. Even though the woman promised Estella she would not get upset, she still felt uncomfortable deep down. What is Lucian thinking? Why would he take Aubrey in after telling me he wanted to pursue me? He even said that he'd give me an explanation. Besides, he knows how Aubrey got physical with Essie. How can Essie feel safe with Aubrey around when it's clear she has an aversion to that woman? The symptoms of Estella's autism had just improved, so Roxanne was worried Aubrey's presence would undo that. Moreover, nobody could guarantee that Aubrey would not take the opportunity to hurt Estella again. The thought of Aubrey bullying the little girl again left Roxanne heartbroken. "Ms. Jarvis," called out Estella while cautiously tugging at Roxanne's sleeve. After returning to her senses, Roxanne turned to the girl. "What is it? Are you mad?" Estella knitted her eyebrows in concern. "You promised that you wouldn't be angry with Daddy." Roxanne's heart clenched inexorably when Estella insisted on defending her father. "I'm not. I made you a promise, and I intend to keep it." Only then did Estella smile. Obviously, she was relieved to hear that Roxanne wouldn't break the promise. "Are you unhappy because Ms. Pearson's staying with you?" Roxanne gazed tenderly at Estella. The girl decided there was no need to hide anything from Roxanne since she was convinced that the latter was not upset with her father. "The evil woman was bad to me, so I don't like her." After that, Estella stared at Roxanne with her pair of puppy dog eyes. "Can you stay with us, Ms. Jarvis?" "Archie and Benny too." The boys immediately got excited after hearing Estella's request. "Mommy!" They wanted to stay with Estella so they could protect her if Aubrey ever decided to bully the girl again. Looking at Archie and Benny, Roxanne wanted to say yes but knew her circumstance would not allow so. "I'm sorry." Roxanne then wrapped her arms tightly and apologetically around Estella before inquiring gently, "Essie, do you dislike Ms. Pearson?" In response, Estella nodded fervently. "Ms. Pearson's always angry with me. She even hit me. She's just pretending to be nice in front of Daddy." Roxanne was filled with helplessness when she noticed how downcast the girl was. "The boys and I may not be able to stay with you, but I can talk to your father." "Don't worry, okay." Estella was obviously disappointed after listening to Roxanne, but she nodded passively in response anyway. "Keep the woman away." Lucian hurried to Roxanne's house to pick up Estella after work that evening. On his way there, Caden's words reverberated in Lucian's mind. Thanks to Caden, Lucian was reminded that Roxanne had not explained her relationship with Jack yet. Even after he had arrived at Roxanne's house, Lucian still could not stop thinking about the matter. Thus, displeasure filled his heart. Roxanne was greeted by the man's cold visage as soon as she opened the door, which got her frozen in place like a statue. "I haven't even given him a piece of my mind about Estella's matter. What's with his attitude? He actually has the audacity to show me that gloomy face? What's wrong? Is something up at work?" questioned Roxanne, trying to be patient. However, Lucian simply looked past the woman with a deadpan expression before asking, "Where's Essie?" "I'm here to take her home." Roxanne furrowed her eyebrows slightly when she sensed the gloomy aura around Lucian. The three children hurried over the second they heard someone at the door. "It's time to go home, Essie." Lucian held out his hand as he looked at the girl. Estella could sense that Lucian was in a bad mood, so she shook her head in response after hiding behind Roxanne. Because of that, the man frowned and shifted his attention back to Roxanne, who patted Estella on the head before turning to her boys. "Why don't you guys play with Essie for a while? Mommy has something to discuss with Mr. Farwell." Archie and Benny both immediately knew that Roxanne had to talk with Lucian about Aubrey, so they nodded cooperatively and took Estella to the living room. Lucian was baffled since he had no idea what Roxanne wanted to talk about. If anything, the man wanted to hear what Roxanne had to say about what happened a few days ago, especially the matter between Jack and her. "Essie said that Ms. Pearson's just moved into your house," voiced Roxanne, trying her best to ignore Lucian's tense aura. The man's eyes quickly turned dull when he realized that Roxanne wanted to talk about Aubrey. After nodding slightly, Lucian responded, "She's staying with us because of the old injury on her arm." Roxanne was hit by another wave of unease when Lucian confirmed what Estella said to be true. However, the woman did not show it. You didn't forget how Ms. Pearson got physical with Essie last time, did you, Mr. Farwell? I'm sure it's quite obvious how Essie feels about Ms. Pearson staying with you. Lucian did not appreciate Roxanne doubting his decision, so he knitted his eyebrows tightly. I know how to handle it. Letting Ms. Pearson stay with you is the reason Essie is down. Roxanne's tone turned cold because the man's action had infuriated her. Don't think you want to see Essie revert to her old self. Where Ms. Pearson stays has nothing to do with me, I just hope she stays away from Essie. Then, Roxanne suddenly fell silent for a few seconds as if she had remembered something. At least give Essie some time to accept Ms. Pearson before letting the woman get close to her, added Roxanne, who almost forgot that Aubrey was still Lucian's fiancée and Estella's future stepmother to the public. If Lucian decided to marry Aubrey, it would be impossible for Estella to avoid the woman forever. The aura surrounding Lucian instantly reached a freezing point when he heard Roxanne, for he knew exactly what the woman's brief pause and the words that followed meant. She still doesn't have faith in what I promised her. Please stop the guessing game. Roxanne had more to say, but Lucian interrupted her coldly before she could continue. That has nothing to do with you, so don't concern yourself with it. I know what to do. Sensing the annoyance in the man's tone, Roxanne was stunned once again. Maybe you've misunderstood me, but I'm only worried about Essie's condition. Your relationship with others has nothing to do with me. The woman thought Lucian got upset because he disliked her getting between Aubrey and him. With that thought in mind, Roxanne could not help but scoff inwardly at herself. The anger Lucian had bottled up on his way there finally exploded after he listened to Roxanne dissociating herself from him repeatedly. Of course, my business has nothing to do with you. After all, you probably only care about matters concerning Mr. Damaris. What's that supposed to mean? Roxanne was baffled when Lucian suddenly replaced Aubrey with her in the crosshair. She never expected Lucian to hold on to the matter because she thought the man would understand. You're happy working for the Damaris family's research institute, aren't you? I know how much you wanted to be a part of the project. Would you have worked that hard if their medical skills were the only reason you wanted to join them? Scoffed Lucian, whose eyes seemed as though they were sharp enough to see through anything. Roxanne furrowed her eyebrows even tighter in response, for she had no idea what the man's words meant. Besides their medical skills, what do they have that's worth so much of my effort? Having been in seclusion from the world for so many years, the Damaris family was only known for their medical skills. In fact, Roxanne did not even know of Jack's existence before the medical consultation. However, it was clear Lucian was implying that Jack was the only reason Roxanne worked so hard, which not only gave the woman a headache but also upset her. Lucian's suspicion obviously meant that he doubted the respect Roxanne had for medical skills. The man was even sure that he was right when he saw how infuriated Roxanne was, so he voiced indifferently, "Your relationship with Mr. Damaris is plain to see, Ms. Jarvis. I'm sure there's no need to paint the whole picture." With that, Lucian looked toward the living room, intending to take Estella home. Still, Roxanne insisted on explaining herself because even though she did not plan to accept Lucian, she refused to let him accuse her with that supposed reason. "Mr. Damaris and I are just friends. The few times we've met in public were for work. Mr. Damaris and Larry are both great doctors, so please stop the guessing game. I won't cut off ties with them just because of your suspicion. Roxanne would have to work with Jack as long as the project remained. As for Larry, the woman had been friends with him for many years. She would never cut off ties with the two men just because Lucian got jealous. However, it was undeniable that Lucian's suspicion had caused her some inconvenience. Lucian only heard the last part of her explanation about how she would not sever ties with the two men because of him. The man then frowned in silence for a moment as the aura surrounding him suddenly dropped to a freezing point. Despite that, Roxanne stood her ground and stared the man in the eye, showing no sign of retreat. Noticing that the two did not enter the room even after some time, the three children couldn't resist coming outside to check. As soon as they reached the door, they felt the tension between the two adults. "Mommy." Benny tugged at Roxanne's clothes cautiously and asked with concern, "Did you get into a fight with Mr. Farwell?" His voice brought Roxanne back to her senses. She composed herself and gave him a faint smile. "No. We just have a disagreement on some things." After saying that, she threw Lucian a look in hopes that he would keep his composure in front of the children. Fortunately, Lucian cared about the kids enough to soften his expression. He looked down at Estella and said, "Essie, it's late. It's time to go home." Sensing the chilling aura around her father, Estella pouted and shook her head. No. Lucian knitted his brows. Before he could say anything, Estella announced, "I want to be with Ms. Jarvis. I don't want to go home." She had already made up her mind while she was playing with Archie and Benny earlier. "Since Ms. Jarvis, Archie, and Benny can't stay in our house, I can stay here with them instead. I don't want to go home and see scary Ms. Pearson. Plus, Daddy looks scary now too. That means he won't spend much time with me when we're home." Estella's resistance to going home intensified further when she realized that. Upon hearing Estella's words, Lucian raised his head and looked at the woman before him. The anger in him had yet to dissipate. Although he knew that Roxanne was the biological mother of his daughter, she had never expressed the intention to return to his house. However, it was clear that Estella liked Roxanne very much. If Roxanne finds out the truth in the future, will she think that I'm being too cruel to Essie? Roxanne felt somehow puzzled when she felt Lucian's gaze on her. Nevertheless, she didn't dare to think too deeply nor ask him about it. Lowering her eyes, she caressed Estella's head. "Essie, be good. It's getting late already. Hurry and go home with your daddy." In truth, she also wanted Estella to stay, but Lucian clearly had no intention to let the girl do so. She was in no position to make that request either. When Estella heard Roxanne urging her to go home, she looked up at the latter dejectedly. Roxanne felt her heart ache at Estella's pitiful face. She glanced at Lucian, only to see his unchanging cold expression. Because of that, she found it even more difficult to speak up and ask him to let Estella stay. Estella turned to Roxanne and then to Lucian. In her frustration, she stomped her feet, ran back to the living room, and sat on the floor behind the couch. Looking at Estella's grumpy figure, Roxanne felt at a loss. She looked at Lucian again, this time with a gentler countenance. Since Lucian was still angry, there was no way he would allow Estella to hang out with her. He simply remained rooted to his spot. With that, the father and daughter reached an impasse. Roxanne sighed inwardly and decided to approach Estella and comfort her first. Since she couldn't persuade the adult, who was currently mad at her, she could only make an effort on the little one. "Mommy!" Right when Roxanne turned around, Archie tugged at the hem of her shirt. Roxanne lowered her eyes in confusion. Archie glanced at Benny before saying earnestly, "Benny and I will talk to Essie. She's upset now, so she probably won't listen to you." It was then that Roxanne realized she was one of the reasons Estella was upset. Since the boys had offered, Roxanne immediately agreed, "I'll leave it to you boys, then." Archie and Benny nodded obediently, then ran to Estella's side before looking at the two adults mysteriously. The next second, they disappeared behind the couch. Roxanne was perplexed about how serious they looked, but she did not disturb them. Instead, she stood in the same spot helplessly and faced Lucian's look of condemnation. She had no idea what she had done to make him look at her that way. In the living room, the three children gathered together and whispered among themselves. "I don't want to go home." Estella knew that the two boys were there to persuade her to leave, so she spoke first. Archie and Benny shared a look. Then, Archie said solemnly, "You have to go home with Mr. Farwell." Estella was disheartened to hear that. "Do you also not like me anymore?" "I don't want to go home. Miss Pearson is there." Archie's and Benny's hearts softened when they saw how sad Estella looked. However, they had to look at the big picture. Benny caressed Estella's hair and told her, "We like you a lot, that's why we want to be family with you." Estella looked at them in puzzlement. She didn't know what Benny meant by that. "I think Mr. Farwell and Mommy had an argument, but I don't know why," Archie remarked, looking at Estella intently. Estella nodded. She had also noticed that Lucian and Roxanne seemed to have fought, which was why she didn't want to go home with him. Archie continued, "You should go home with Mr. Farwell and try to get him to tell you something, while Benny and I will ask our mommy." At that moment, realization dawned upon Estella. "If I want Ms. Jarvis to become my mommy, I can't let them continue this silent treatment toward each other. We have to help them reconcile." With that thought in mind, Estella nodded heavily. "I get it now." Archie and Benny nodded and each held out a hand to her. "Then let's go." Estella grabbed hold of their hands and stood up. Upon returning to the door, she shyly pulled at Lucian's shirt to let him know that she wanted to go home with him. Seeing how quickly Estella changed her mind, Roxanne looked at her sons in surprise. What did they tell Essie? Archie and Benny remained nonchalant. They even waved at Estella. "Bye, Essie." Roxanne turned to Estella, feeling astonished. The latter waved back at the two boys before looking up and waving at her. It seemed that the girl was no longer upset. Roxanne nodded at her with a smile, but she couldn't help sighing inwardly. Even the kids can communicate better than us adults. No right to be mad. After seeing Lucian and Estella off, Roxanne returned inside the mansion with Archie and Benny and started preparing for dinner. "Mommy!" The two boys followed her into the kitchen. Roxanne stopped what she was doing and asked, "What is it? Why did you fight with Mr. Farwell?" Archie and Benny looked at her intently. Their question caught her off guard. I didn't. She was about to deny the fact that they fought, but she was interrupted by her kids. We saw everything. You can't lie to children. Roxanne was at a loss for words. What's going on with them today? She had had countless disagreements with Lucian and Archie, and Benny had always been on her side without asking her what had happened. Did Mr. Farwell make you upset? Roxanne began to ponder who was at fault in her conflict with Lucian, but she couldn't figure it out even after some time. In the end, she could only shake her head and explain evasively, "No. I was just talking to Mr. Farwell about Essie, and I started to sound impatient as we spoke." Suspicion was written all over Archie's and Benny's faces. Roxanne stroked their heads and said, "All right, that's enough. Don't worry about the adults. You boys head on out now. I have to prepare dinner. Archie and I are better than adults in some aspects," Benny argued. Roxanne knew what they meant. They could help her with her problems, but it wasn't appropriate to let them know about her relationship issues. She pushed them out of the kitchen and said, "I know you two are the best, but you should refrain from causing trouble in the kitchen." Without giving them any chance to retort, she walked back into the kitchen. Archie and Benny were crestfallen as they looked at her back. It seemed that they had failed in their mission, and they could only hope that Estella could extract some useful information from Lucian. As Lucian drove back to the Farwell residence with deeply furrowed brows, he noticed through the rear-view mirror that Estella had been staring at him in the back seat. "What is it?" he asked. Estella tilted her head and asked in a piping voice, "Daddy, did you fight with Ms. Jarvis earlier?" A dark look fleeted across Lucian's eyes. "Why did you fight with Ms. Jarvis?" Estella continued to question. "What if Ms. Jarvis starts ignoring us because she's mad?" Lucian grimaced helplessly when he noticed Estella putting the blame on him. "I'm very mad, too." Estella widened her eyes and stared at him fiercely. "Daddy, you shouldn't be mad." Lucian was already feeling frustrated because of Roxanne in the first place. When he heard Estella, he almost laughed in exasperation. "Not only is Essie on Roxanne's side, she even thinks I have no right to be Ma." Estella seemed righteously indignant about what Lucian did to Roxanne. "Since Daddy wants to court Ms. Jarvis, he can't be mad at her, much less make her angry." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.